Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Wednesday. Got three things I want to share with you today. I've put them in the description. A little bit of a discussion about the difference between being alone and being lonely. Second thing I'm going to share with you is about boredom in the process. And the third thing, it's related to the second thing. It's about loss of motivation when you're working on something. And all these three things I've sort of experienced, and that's why I'm sharing with them about them. So the first one, I've been aware of this for a long time. The difference between being alone and being lonely, especially since I'm not saying we've come out of COVID, but COVID definitely brought attention to a lot of people the importance of connection. And there's a saying that you could be alone in a crowd. So being alone is just, how can I best describe it? Being alone, it can be a choice. It's not necessarily forced upon you. Being alone can be something that you choose to do, spend time by yourself, keep to yourself, keeping your own thoughts, keeping your own mind. And you can be perfectly content and happy being alone at any given time. Being lonely is a totally different thing, and I've experienced this at times, a sense of disconnection, a sense of withdrawal, pulling back from people. And it may even sometimes be where you actually want the company of someone. They could help you get out of that state. I refer to these times as red zones, and I'm very conscious of my own red zones, and I know when they're most likely to occur, when I've done most of my other things that I want to do, my reading, my exercise, my work, and something creeps up. And a sense of loneliness and disconnection comes on, and I withdraw, and I don't want to connect with people, I don't want to chat with people, and I have to be very careful in those times because emotions can go into not so positive areas. So part of one of the reasons why I keep this group running is that sense of connection I get with other people, like-minded people who are interested in personal development, personal growth, and how the brain works, how the mind works, how motivation works, what it's like to be a human being trying to work on things. So I wanted to share that just to let you know that even for someone like me who's very well read, very well studied in this area, that I experienced a full range of emotions. I'm not in the joyful happy all the time. I very rarely visit that because I like to be in progress, and sometimes in progress it's more a sense of frustration than it is anything else, because I'm constantly striving for something new. So yeah, just be wary of your red zones and just check in with yourself whether at any time you're choosing to give time to yourself or you're feeling emotions of loneliness. So I think it's important for people to talk about that, because everyone can think that every other person's got a great life. But as I mentioned, even for me, who's got a great circle of friends, support, connections, it does come up. Okay, second topic for today. I'm just going to get the other screen up and show you a chapter from the workbook. Excellent, it works. So I've got the screen up here. There's a workbook that I loaded up onto the website, Be Awesome website. It's from the workshop that I conducted on Saturday around this book here. Let me go back again. Atomic Habits, you can see it on screen there. And chapter 19, The Goldilocks Rule. How to stay motivated in life and work. And I've shared this plenty of times that I'm working on health and I'm working on my Spanish language. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it's motivation that's getting me through. Motivation generally gets you started. But I don't rely on motivation. What I rely on is momentum. I make sure that every day I do something, no matter how small it is, to keep myself connected with the goal, keep myself connected with the activities to drive myself forward. And I know that over time, as long as I keep on putting in the effort and I make small adjustments, small corrections, I'll move myself closer and closer to the goal. And the goal, the result becomes... it almost becomes a byproduct rather than the actual result I'm chasing. As long as I carry on doing the thing that I've set myself out to do, the goal, the result will take care of itself. So let me just read this back to you. The Goldilocks rule states that humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current capabilities. The greatest threat to success is not failure but boredom. As habits become routine, they become less interesting and less satisfying. We get bored. Anyone can work hard when they feel motivated. It's the ability to keep going when work isn't exciting that makes a difference. Professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let life get in the way. There was a book I wanted to share. You see, this is why I like to have my books organized. I know exactly where to find things. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield is an amazing book about overcoming resistance. And when you're working on anything, resistance is a daily battle. And Turning Pro is about the difference between amateurs and professionals. Those that get results and those that want results. I like to think of myself as the person in the second in the camp that gets results. So anyway, in this book here, he talks about the Goldilocks zone, about the difference between boredom and failure, and I find the same thing. I get up and most of my days are very similar. The routine is very similar. The wake up time is very similar. My behaviors are very similar. I've got a schedule that I stick to. I go to exercise 4 or 5 times a week. I study my Spanish, and it becomes routine, it becomes normal, and it becomes boring. And you have to be careful of that boredom, because that's when you start losing motivation and you start losing sight of the goals as you repeat the same thing day in, day out. And the results can come so very slowly. I'm working on my health goal, and unfortunately one of the things with the health goal is you're constantly checking to see if you're making progress, and because you're constantly checking, the likelihood of you seeing a difference between 1 hour and the next and 1 day and the next is very low. That's why I only do the weight check once a week, because if I was doing it every day, it can just as easily mess with my emotions. So I'm going to try something else new in a second as well. I'm going to explain something different here about motivation and why people struggle. This is something that I've come across regularly, so let me get this transitioned. So I'm going to explain one of the biggest challenges that people have with motivation, and I've got my whiteboard on here, so I'm going to try something new. So we're going to start off with the gap analysis. So this is the starting point. This is here. This is where any person starts, and that's why we usually start with the balance wheel. We get an assessment of where a person is starting, how they're assessing their life in different categories. So the next thing we're going to do is create another point, which is called there, the place that someone wants to get to. Yeah. And the gap analysis is how to get from here to there. That's the gap. And what happens is, let's call this one motivation, and this is time. This is very common. I've seen this so many times. When a person is at the start, at the beginning, the first thing they generally tend to do is think about the result that they want to achieve and obtain. The final result, whether it's a health goal, whether it's a relationship, money goals, whatever. They visualize on some level the result that they want to achieve and the goal that they want to get. And what happens is, in that moment, right at the beginning, motivation goes up high. The brain releases chemicals, it releases endorphins. A person gets into a very motivated state while they think about the result that they want to achieve. And the brain can't tell the difference between something that's imagined and something that's real. So when someone connects with their goal, the brain releases a rush of endorphins as if that goal or result has already materialized, and that feeling of motivation comes on. Now, what happens is, the next step after that is that you have to start taking action. Now, when you start taking action, the brain goes into a different thing. It goes away from the result that you want to achieve and it goes into task mode. It starts thinking about the thing that you have to do to get the result. And what happens is, all that motivation drops off and it comes all the way back down, because you're now going into cortisol. Generally, when you start thinking about doing something, the brain releases a different set of chemicals, cortisol, stress chemicals, because you're now in the doing. And what happens is that unless you learn how to deal with cortisol and how you learn to deal with problem solving and how to deal with tasks, you'll lose motivation. Now, within a few days, what tends to happen, I'll do a different color here, you'll repeat the same cycle again. You'll think about a new goal, and motivation will go up, and then you'll go into task and it'll go down, and then you'll repeat it again. You'll think about a new goal and motivation will go up and it goes down, and you'll jump from one goal to the next, never sticking with one goal long enough to get you from here to there. So here's one of the ways we're dealing with that. Let me add another page on here if I can. So here's one of the ways of dealing with that, and we'll do the same thing again. So you got here, you've got there, this is where you want to get to, this is your time. Motivation goes up as you think about where you want to get to, and then it drops down on the task. So the way to deal with that is, rather than thinking of the end result, what you do is you break this down into milestones, small checkpoints along the way. So the motivation, instead of going for the full length where you want to get to at the end, what you do is you're focusing on the next step, and the motivation required to get to the next step is a lot less. And what you do is you focus on just a small task. So instead of going for big motivation, what you're doing is you're getting motivation here, but because where you want to get to is a smaller area, you can deal with just this step here. Here. So you set a smaller milestone. In Eat That Frog, let me switch screen again. So in Eat That Frog here, let me find out if the chapter, I'll see if I can find out which chapter it is. Chapter 10, take it one oil barrel at a time, page 60. So what this in this book here, he was telling the story about a person many years ago driving an old Land Rover across the heart of the Sahara Desert, deep in modern Algeria. By the time The desert had been abandoned by the French for years, and the original refueling stations were empty and shuttered. The desert was 500 miles across in a single stretch, without water, food, a blade of grass, or even a fly. It was totally flat, like a broad yellow sand parking lot that stretched to the horizon in all directions. More than 1,300 people had perished in the crossing. Often drifting sands had obliterated the track across the desert, and travellers had gotten lost in the night, never to be found again alive. To counter this lack of features in the terrain, the French had marked the track with black 55-gallon oil drums every 5 kilometers, which was exactly the distance to the horizon formed by the curvature of the earth. Because of this, in the daytime we could see 2 oil barrels, the one we had just passed and the one 5 kilometers ahead of it, and that was all we needed to stay on course. All we had to do was to steer for the next oil barrel. As a result, we were able to cross the biggest desert in the world by simply taking it 1 oil barrel at a time. Very good chapter, very good analogy about breaking big goals down into small measurable milestones, 1 oil barrel at a time. And that's how I'm working on my goal. I was 101 kilograms in July. I'm 77 kilograms now, so I'm 50 pounds down. But I didn't get down 50 pounds in just a single step. It was, and I break it down, 4 ounces at a time. I knew that every day I went to the gym, the likelihood I was going to lose 4 ounces. And then another day I'd go on 4 ounces, and within 3 days I'd lose a pound, and within a week I'd lose 2 pounds. And I've just stuck with it over 6-7 months, and that's why I've managed to get it down. So all I wanted to share with you today is, if you're working on a goal and you're losing motivation, rather than thinking about how big the mountain it is that you've got to climb, just think about the step that you can take today. And then eventually what will happen is you will get to the end, you'll get to your goal. Okay, good practice for something new. I've got my whiteboard working. See, that's another improvement. I did a broadcast earlier on in the week about that you can't get better unless you get started. And I've just demonstrated that even for me, I'm making constant improvements, and they're working. Alright, 3 topics covered for today. I've got my coffee here. It's 3 out of 3 for the week. I hope you have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow. Share something else. Alright, take care. Bye.